So we're ranked number 40 out of 40 schools, right? We're ranked number 1 in cost per pupil. So we spend more per pupil than any other country in the world. And we're ranked at the bottom of the list. We're ranked very badly. And what I want to do is let the states run schools.
Even after the trillions of dollars in federal funding, the results, the standardized results of students have remained almost entirely unchanged since 1979 when the department was founded. I believe it is completely irrational and a logically untenable situation to look at our Department of Education and to advocate more resources being put into it. If you are results oriented in any way, if people say you have to look at the empirical, you have to look at the data, there is no case that can be legitimately made to argue for the Department of Education as it currently exists. And yesterday, President Trump pledged to work with Congress and teachers' unions to try and close the Department of Education.
And on the Education Department, why nominate Linda McMahon to be the Education Department Secretary if you're going to get rid of the Education Department?
Because I told Linda, I hope you do a great job and put yourself out of a job. I want her to put herself out of a job. Education Department. So we're ranked number 40 out of 40 schools, right? We're ranked number 1 in cost per pupil. So we spend more per pupil than any other country in the world. And we're ranked at the bottom of the list. We're ranked very badly. And what I want to do is let the states run schools. I believe strongly in school choice. But in addition to that, I want the states to run schools. And I want Linda to put herself out of a job. I think I'd work with Congress. I think we'd have to work with the teachers union because the teachers union is the only one that's opposed to it. Nobody else would want to hold it back. Look, we have to tell the teachers union, we're rated last in the world.
Everything he has just said is correct. And this is the perfect time to actually introduce you to, many of you have subscribed and followed it. You can listen to it wherever audio podcasts are available. The show that we have that accompanies this, 3 and 3. And the first one we ever did was on the Department of Education. It's 3 key facts in 3 minutes or less. Anywhere podcasts are available, you can go to 3keyfacts.com so that you can look, you can peruse all of the references. It's a place to start on some key issues. So I'm just going to, I guess, in video form, present that, and then we'll expound upon it because we have a longer show here. So key fact number 1 is the creation of the Department of Education. So the Federal Department of Education, as we know it today, was created in 1979 under Jimmy Carter, significantly increased the federal government's role in funding public education. So prior to the Federal Department of Education, the federal government largely played an advisory role, while the funding for public education, it came almost entirely from state and local governments. Key fact number 2, the cost of the Department of Education is astronomical. In total, the Federal Department of Education has spent over $2 trillion since its inception, not accounting for inflation. Also, key fact there, Noodles, you pointed this out.
They also probably need to lose their funding for spelling education wrong.
On their own website.
On their own website.
On their own website.
Yeah.
We didn't even...
So as a matter of fact, just so you know, today, because you'll see these stickers out there when, the Air Force has to host bake sales for their bombers and schools get the funding. Okay, over $2 trillion. Today, the Department of Education's discretionary budget is the 3rd largest of the federal government. The only ones that are larger, Department of Defense, Department of Health and Human Services. Key fact number 3. You have the founding, you have the amount of money, which is insane. That brings us to the results. Even after the trillions of dollars in federal funding, the results, the standardized results of students have remained almost entirely unchanged since 1979 when the department was founded. And even worse, there's new data emerging that today shows a negative trend with standardized math scores at their lowest since 1990, reading scores at their lowest since 2004. That's 3 and 3, 3 key facts in 3 minutes or less. And you can go and download those. There's the party switch myth, 3 minutes, abortion, taxes, immigration, the assassination attempt on President Trump, the gender wage gap. You can go and download those wherever audio podcasts exist. So let's expound upon that now. The founding. And this is what you cannot argue $2 trillion and worse results and say, put more money into it.
And not adjusted for inflation. That's
not adjusted for inflation.
Difference too.
We'll go through these again and kind of add some context. So in 1973, the Supreme Court did affirm that education is a state's right. Okay, San Antonio ISD versus Rodriguez. Supreme Court wrote, though education is one of the most important services performed by the state, it is not within the limited category of rights recognized by this court as guaranteed by the federal Constitution. And by the way, each and every one of the 50 state constitutions establish some kind of public education system. So again, before the trillions of dollars, your parents still had access to public school.
Yeah.
And the results were better. We've spent more, results are worse.
That's why my dad thinks he's smarter than me.
Yes, because he most likely is, if you compare that generation on average.
I think so.
That's true.
They may not be as informed in modern issues like technology, right? Things change, but as far as baseline education, yes, they were. They received a well-balanced education. Let's go get into the costs and the waste. So from 1980 to 2021, it's about $2 trillion. And you wonder, okay, where is this money going? Like in 2019, the federal government wasted billions of dollars on grant programs, billions of dollars. To give you an idea, 2024, the Department of Education received $268 billion in federal funding. That's 4% of all federal funding. Student loans, to give you an idea, over the last 25 years, they went from generating $114 billion in income to the government to costing the government $197 billion.
Well, that just keeps going up when they try to forgive student debt.
Exactly. Yes. There's been money that's been wasted. Things like DEI, administration. You look at the students, the teacher populations, right? You look at the student to teacher ratios, and these aren't good. But if you look at other private schools, for example, in New York, Catholic schools, they have a larger student per teacher ratio, more students per teacher, and they perform better. Right, the school district administrations in general, they grew about 87%.
Yeah, even though there's only 9% student growth.
Yes, 9% student growth, but way larger administrative growth in the school library porn sections grew by 69%.
Jeez.
79% of school districts with more than 100,000 students have a chief diversity officer. The other 21% are in black neighborhoods, to be clear. Now,
No need for that.
this is where you're looking at the fraud, because you can't really put a number on the DEI propaganda and social engineering until you do some digging. Then you can put a number on it, and you can certainly look at the system and say, well, this system is broken.
Yeah.
And part of the foundation right now of this system is we've gone away from merit-based. We've gone to DEI. We've gone to identity politics. Any way that you slice it, and this is where you can have Mark Cuban come on and say, actually, diversity makes us better. Okay. $2 trillion, not adjusted for inflation, worse results.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. What does it take? What does it take? That's how you know that leftism, progressivism, is a religion. It's dogmatic. Where when faced with irrefutable evidence, this is one of those subjects, there is no argument to be made that the Department of Education has improved education at all. They still say more money, please, more money, please. Let's go to the performance, by the way, to get a little more granular. Since the founding, the DOE, standardized test scores, they haven't gotten better. Like I told you, math, lowest since 1990. Reading is the lowest since 2004. And so, wait, if the DOE is the third largest budget and we spent $2 trillion math tests, it sucks.
Yeah. That's the right conclusion.
Lowest scores, some cases 35 years. Let me give you a specific example. So that's the empirical. Let me give you one example. 2021, Illinois received $7 billion in federal funds for schools. This be, I think, dispersed over 3 years. You guys have the references there. In 2023, Illinois had 0 students proficient in reading in 32 schools. 0 students proficient in math in 67 schools.
Jeez.
$7 billion, 2 years later, 0 even passable in basic reading and math in dozens of schools. I know you're saying that's an outlier. Okay, again, the meta-analysis looking at from a bird's eye view, $2 trillion, it's bad across the board.
Yeah.
Could have used that money to cheat instead.
Yes, exactly. You know, like they do in India, where they have people come in, take their tests in degree mills so they can get an H-1B. 2023, Maryland received $350 million from the Department of Education. Results, 0 students in 40% of Baltimore high schools passed the Maryland state math exam.
What?
In 40% of all high schools in Baltimore, there was not one high school student who passed the basic math exam.
Wow.
Dang.
And it starts at the top.
And then they get a diploma?
Depends.
You just hang out for a while, do a couple
Depends
of
on the
victory laps.
color of the skin, on the gender. And it starts at the top. And, you know, I would say the top is pretty bad considering the Department of Education cannot even spell the word education.
Yeah, I jumped the gun. You could admonish me.
Education.
So this is, and whatever, you guys can jump, you guys can comment. Anyone out there go to public schools? I went to public schools in Canada.
I did.
They were much better than here. I didn't realize that in the United States, you had to go to one public school because we were allowed to go to any school if we were able to get on a bus or our parents would drive us. The schools were better. The United States, we should be the best at everything. We have the resources to.
Yeah.
We have the ingenuity to. We have the people here who can make it better. They're just not allowed to. If anyone can make the case as to why American students, why the United States is better off with the current Department of Education as it exists, please reach out, because I have never heard it.
No.
Not anything even remotely convincing.
No, I mean, everybody out there freaking out about this, like this was a state issue for a very long time. It needs to go back to being a state issue, if for only because we understand bureaucracy, it's going to slow things down, it's going to cost money, and it's also a one-size-fits-all solution. And that's not going to work in these communities in different states across the country. There are different needs in different districts, and a state can address that a lot better than a federal program. By the way, certain states kind of lead the way in this anyway, Texas being one of those states. Second thing is, you should be able to spend your dollars, your tax dollars in Texas through property taxes that go to funding the schools. You should be able to spend those dollars as a student wherever you want to go. And by the way, don't tell me that's just going to benefit the white communities and people that have privilege. No, it's going to benefit people that are stuck at one of those 32 high schools in Illinois that can't pass the reading test, or the 67 that can't pass the math test.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's the 40% of people in Baltimore, 40% of people in schools in Baltimore that can't pass the state proficiency test in math. You can get out of those places, not just be, you live here, so you got to go to that school. You're screwed.
Just
I'm
look
sorry.
at it economically.
Yeah.
You know, if you're in a poor neighborhood, you got a poor school. That's
Right.
A lot of places that property taxes
Yeah.
or taxes are levied for their school system. So if you can have the choice to take the same amount of money and go to a different school, wouldn't that be better for a minority?
Of course. Yeah, you would think so.
I just look at it economically,
Yeah.
but that's how it ends up being usually.
It also makes this really makes it really clear to me. You know, you've seen it with the left and engineering as far as gender relationships and trying to say that men and women are the same and interchangeable. This really makes sense when you think about the fact that our government, our media, our entertainment industry has constantly vilified those in business. The business owner, the wealthy person, is the bad guy, right? Every single time they show up in a film, it's the dad who's a dick who only cares about money. You know why? They are deathly afraid of being the only entity of this size, meaning the federal government, of being treated exactly like a business. And that is precisely what we need. Anywhere else in a business, if you walk in, Gerald, CEO, says, hey, we really need increased funding in, I don't know, advertising, whatever it is, increased funding for I go, okay, what did we spend last year? We spent $1 million. Okay, what do we have to show for it? Well, we have this amount of revenue, 1.2. Okay, so it's a net positive. And can you tell me how this will benefit us in the future? Whatever it is, what is this employee provided? Okay, what's the cost? What's the cost analysis here? Right? Or if you came to me though and said, hey, we need more money for new equipment. I said, well, how much have we spent? And you said $2 trillion. And I said, what do we have to show for it? You said, well, remember how we used to have HD? We don't have that anymore. Yeah. Remember how we used to be able to do that? We don't have that anymore. Yeah. We actually have fewer viewers, fewer subscribers, less ad revenue, and lower quality video. I would say, well, maybe it's time to make a change. The only place that doesn't exist, and they are deathly afraid of any type of change, is in the federal government. Nowhere else could this exist in nature.
Yeah.
It is a hemorrhaging of resources. And the worst part is we're hemorrhaging the resources. The left wants you to turn a blind eye, and it's harming kids. It's harming our children. We live in an era where information and education has never been more accessible, regardless of social status, wealth. And people are dumber. Just like we've never had more access to healthy food and information regarding healthy habits, exercise, eating, sleeping. And we're fatter with a lower life expectancy. How do we get here? And at what point do we say, okay, $2 trillion not adjusted for inflation? It's not working. Hey, our approach to health is not working. The only way you can make the case for the current Democrat Party and progressivism is if you believe that change is evil and that more money solves the problem. You have to start with that as the premise for how you approach any problem. No change, we can't do that, that's evil, and more money will always solve the problem. We've seen the opposite in reality. I don't know what it takes. And I think you're going to see the pendulum swing more in the direction of the right because people know that our educational system is broken. People know that our healthcare system is broken. People have bitched for a very long time, said, hey, no one does anything about it. Well, guess what? Now we are. And the good news is it really can't get all that much worse. $2 trillion and worse results.
Yeah.
Are you clear? Nothing else matters. That's it. It's done. You can say whatever you want. You can argue $2 trillion and we're shittier. You get nothing. Hey, if you like this video, we're probably like-minded and you may enjoy some more content. You could click that video, watch another one, or tune in weekdays at 10 a.m. Eastern. Because we're the same. You and me. We're kindred spirits.